All right, we're gonna get spicy with this one. This page is called Gender and Climate Awareness. All right, so this combines two chats, right? So we're gonna talk about gender differences, lived experience, and climate change awareness. So the first one, gender differences, lived experience. This is just one question with a nuanced answer. I asked chat, how are the lived experiences of women different than of men? In case you didn't know, they're very different. Chat said the lived experiences of women and men differ across various dimensions due to social, cultural, economic, and biological factors. Here are some key areas where these differences are most evident. 1. Socialization and gender roles. Women often socialize to prioritize nurturing roles, relationships, and appearance. They may face societal pressure to conform to traditional gender roles, such as being primary caregivers. Men typically socialize to value independence, strength, and financial success. They may experience pressure to be the primary breadwinners and conform to ideals of masculinity. See how this is sort of a double-edged sword already? All right, number 2, workplace dynamics. Women more likely to experience gender discrimination, wage gaps, and underrepresentation in leadership positions. They may face challenges balancing work and family responsibilities, right? It's hard to be nurturing when you're expected to have intellectual output 24/7. That's not even intuitive. Anyways, men generally earn higher wages and are more represented in higher ranking positions. However, they may face stigmatization for taking parental leave or pursuing careers in traditionally female-dominated fields. So it's hard for women have to conform to the man world, but so do men. It's kind of fucked up. 3, health and healthcare. Women encounter specific health issues related to reproductive health, such as pregnancy and menopause. They might also experience gender bias in medical research and healthcare, and also psychology, which, bleeds into psychiatry. Women have mental health too, bro. Anyways, men face higher risk for certain conditions like heart disease and may be less likely to seek medical help due to societal expectations about masculinity. All right. Education. Women increasingly achieving higher levels of education, but may still face barriers in STEM fields. They can experience gender-based violence and harassment in educational settings and also work settings, right? Men may have higher dropout rates in certain regions and might face different educational expectations or pressures, but generally, men are expected to be in these more intellectual fields, right? 5, safety and violence. Women more likely to be victims of domestic violence, sexual harassment, and assault. And we should not be taking these things lightly, people, because they matter. Public safety concerns can restrict their freedom of movement and activities. Ever heard of victim blaming? Never happens more than in sexual harassment cases. True story. Men more likely to be victims of violent crimes in general, but less likely to report domestic violence due to stigma. If a woman is beating me up, then I'm just a bad man, right? 6, political and social participation. Women underrepresented in political and decision-making roles, but are increasingly active in advocacy and grassroots movements. So women are stereotypically care more. Men more likely to hold political office and leadership roles, but may face less encouragement to participate in social justice causes centered around gender equality, right? If men benefit from the system, then they would be more likely to propagate the system even more because it's advantageous to them, right? It's kind of selfish, though. All right, media representation. Women, often portrayed in stereotypical roles, are subjected to objectification. What is our obsession with the 3D body? Are we more personalities or are we more body? Representation in media can impact self-esteem and societal perceptions. Men portrayed as strong, dominant, and emotionally reserved, which can reinforce harmful stereotypes about masculinity. Guess what, men? You've got feelings too. Whoa. Better watch out. Finally, number 8, legal rights and protections. Women, in many parts of the world, women still face legal inequalities in areas such as inheritance, divorce, and property rights. Fine example, Saudi Arabia. Advocacy continues for laws that protect against gender-based violence and discrimination. I think like women can't even drive there. Like, that's just fucked up, dude. That's fucked up. Men in legal rights and protections generally face fewer legal barriers, but can be disadvantaged by laws and social norms related to custody and parental rights. You know, me living in Indiana my whole life, I always heard that women, almost always win the court cases in terms of that. So these differences in lived experiences reflect broader structural inequalities and cultural norms, right? Underneath a society is a culture. It's like the point of a society is a culture, right? Efforts toward gender equality aim to address and mitigate these disparities, promoting more equitable experiences for all genders. But let's not forget that women have been treated horribly throughout the course of history. And that's also not something to be taken lightly, because this is our collective history, right? And we know that we inherit unprocessed trauma through the generations, right? Thank Dr. Rachel Yehuda for that. All right, so climate change awareness, right? Now, do these really have something to do with one another? Well, if you buy into Gaia theory, this is a different side of the same coin of a movement toward empowering the divine feminine. So there we go. I asked chat, what should the world know more about? Just in general. And chat responded, the world should know more about climate change and its impacts, not just on the environment, but on global health, economies, and social structures. Increased awareness can drive more significant actions towards sustainable practices, policy changes, and innovation in clean energy, right? There's a masculine energy, and there's a feminine energy, right? It's just the law of gender, 12 universal laws, look into it. Understanding the interconnectedness of climate change with other global issues can also foster international cooperation and proactive measures to mitigate its effects, right? So then I asked, if you were making an album to capture the full spectrum of issues, right? Because we listen to music and music speaks in ways beyond words, right? If you were making an album to capture the full spectrum of issues entangled in the climate crisis, what details would you include to most effectively expand the consciousness of the listener? Chat said, creating an album to capture the full spectrum of issues entangled in the climate crisis would involve a mix of educational content, emotional storytelling, and actionable messages. Here are some details to include. 1. Introduction track, The State of Our Planet. Overview of current climate conditions, key statistics and facts, brief historical context of human impact on the environment, right? Number 2, track on natural disasters, wrath of nature, stories of communities affected by hurricanes, wildfires, floods, and droughts, particularly the indigenous Americans, scientific explanations of how climate change exacerbates, worsens these events, right? We are in feedback loops of climate change. Track number 3, biodiversity and extinction, vanishing species. Highlight endangered species and ecosystems, and maybe, if we really think on far enough a timeline, that could be us. Anyways, the importance of biodiversity for ecological balance, vanishing species. Number 4, human health, invisible threats, impact of climate change on public health, e.g. heat waves, spread of diseases, air quality, etc. And this will probably exacerbate like social structures as well, right? So, we're seeing more parallels between the gender and the climate crises. They are actually like a destructive, vicious cycle, right? Invisible threats, personal stories from affected individuals. Number 5, economic impact, the cost of inaction, how climate changes affect economies, job markets, and industries, the financial benefits of investing in green technologies and sustainable practices. Where were you? 6, social justice, unequal burdens, climate change's disproportionate impact on marginalized communities, right? Exacerbating the social issues, voices of activists and leaders advocating for environmental justice. If we take care of nature, we take care of our natures, people. 7, innovations and solutions, seeds of hope, examples of renewable energy projects, sustainable agriculture and conservation efforts, interviews with scientists, engineers, and innovators. So this is, rapidly turning into a new kind of album that I don't think has ever been seen before. This is like if Pink Floyd made a version of The Wall, but for all the global issues. And I'd be interested in pursuing that. So, get me some funding, people. All right, 8, government and policy, a call to action, right? Analysis of international agreements, policies, and political movements, the role of governments in driving large-scale change. This would be like, Pink Floyd's Money, but for government, right? 9, youth and future generations, voices of tomorrow, perspectives from young activists and future leaders. This is our future. I'm only 23. I'm hoping that you're young as well. But regardless, the time is now because it affects all of us and it's going to affect us certainly 7 generations from now. The better question is, do we want to create a better future for our children? Let's see. Intergenerational solidarity in education. Okay, number 10, personal action. Every step counts. Practical tips, reducing carbon footprints. It's not about did you recycle, it's about does the city recycle. Stories of individuals and communities making a difference. 11, closing track, a vision for the future, a hopeful and inspiring message about what a sustainable future could look like. I call it global meta-modern cultural perpetuity. We will absolutely be breaking that down. Encouragement for collective and global cooperation. Each track should blend music, spoken word, interviews, and soundscapes to create an immersive and impactful listening experience. So then I asked, what should the details for an album, or what should the details for an album addressing the meta crisis be? The meta crisis is something that is proposed. It's like 2 layers deeper than the climate crisis. We will also talk about that more, right? Chat said, creating an album addressing the meta crisis, which encompasses the interconnected global issues such as climate change, inequality, political instability, and technological disruption, requires a nuanced approach. Here are the details for such an album. 1, introduction track, Web of Complexity, overview of the concept of the meta crisis, explanation of interconnected global issues and their compounding effects. So, when the Suez Canal gets blocked for a day, global supply chains get disrupted. It's all interconnected. Okay. 2, track on climate change, Earth in peril. Recap of key climate issues and the ripple effects on other crises. Emphasis on the urgency of addressing climate change as a central issue, not just for you, not just for me, not just even for us at this point in 2025, but for humanity as a whole. 7 generations. Let's see. 3, economic inequality, divided worlds. Examination of wealth disparity and its global implications. Stories of individuals from different socioeconomic backgrounds. We want to have an inclusive field of all experiences. Political instability, fragile states. Analysis of how political instability exacerbates, I love that word, exacerbates other crises. Case studies of countries experiencing conflict and government challenges. And let's not forget this is an album, right? So we got to weave this with music. Whew. 5, in technological disruption, digital dilemmas. Impact of rapid technologies, advancements on jobs, privacy, and social structures. Exploration of both positive and negative aspects of technological change. 6, health crises, silent epidemics. We saw this with COVID. Link between global health issues like pandemics, mental health, non-communicable diseases, and other crises. When our mental health gets worse, any issues that are affecting the mental health also get worse, right? Vicious cycles, but any vicious cycle can also be a virtuous cycle. All right, and then we're looking at personal stories and expert insights. Of course, we want, again, balanced perspectives. Social justice, struggles for equality, intersection of social justice movements with environment and economic issues. Voices from various movements advocating for equality and justice. Those go hand in hand. 8, cultural and spiritual disconnection, lost connections, right? Discussion of how modern life contributes to a sense of disconnection and existential crises. I will tell you what, an existential crisis does not make you buy a Ferrari. It makes you reorganize your entire personality and who you are and what you thought you stood for and where you even going in this lifetime, from very personal experience. Exploration of cultural heritage, spirituality, and the search for meaning. We all want meaning. We all want truth. And if you tell me otherwise, then I probably won't believe you. Education and misinformation. Number 9, truth and trust. This is important. Role of education in addressing global crises and the spread of misinformation. Why do we lie to each other so much? My biggest breakthrough, why am I so sarcastic all the time? I'm still fluent in sarcasm, but it's better, you can have a good spice and still overspice the stew if you used too much, right? You want it well spiced. Interviews with educators, scientists, and media experts about truth and trust. What is the nature of truth and how can we take subjective truths and weave them together into a bigger macro truth? That's my philosophy. 10, innovation and resilience. Paths forward, stories of innovative solutions of resilient communities, especially the indigenous Americans. I'm gonna keep tooting their horn, but emphasis on the potential for positive change and collaborative efforts. We can live in harmony with one another and with nature. That's called cultural perpetuity. 11, youth and intergenerational dialogue, bridging generations, perspectives from young people and their vision for the future. Importance of intergenerational dialogue and mentorship. We should be having infants, children, teens, young adults, middle-aged adults, mature adults, we'll call them, and elders, and they should all be mixed together. We should all be doing something called allo parenting, where each of us helps raise the inner child of everybody else in the field. But we need trust and we need truth for that, right? We need to know who we can be safe to explore all parts of ourselves with. We need to know who we're safe to be whole with. Whole, holism, holy, the meta-modern definition. Okay. Youth and intergenerational dialogue, we talked about that, right? So 12, personal and collective action. Every voice matters. Encouragement for individual and collective action to address the meta-crisis, which is addressing the poly-crisis, which is all the systems. The meta-crisis is like the philosophical layer underneath of that. And then the poly-crisis is all the systemic issues that are compounding around the globe that keep us from coming together over climate crisis. And personal and collective action, every voice matters, practical steps and inspirational messages. And finally, the closing track, unified vision, a hopeful and inspiring vision for a unified global effort to address the meta-crisis, right? As within, so without. If we heal the inner space, we heal the outer space, because it's all one energy. And then finally, call to action for solidarity, cooperation, and systemic change, right? If we want the prices of eggs to go down, then, there's a lot of different options, but part of that means that we could also just find a place to have chickens. There are a lot of different options, but we just need to be in communion about it. Each track should integrate diverse elements such as music, spoken word, interviews, soundscapes, and narratives to create a comprehensive and emotionally engaging experience. The goal is to expand listeners' understanding of the interconnected nature of global issues and inspire collective action. So I hope that this is inspiring you to take a little bit of action, to think creatively about your place in the world and what we can do about it. And thank you for joining me for this page of the Atlas of Everything Human.